This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Main Street. Gary Allen with you. I hope you had a wonderful week since the last time we conversed. We've got a full show this afternoon, so I'm not going to really waste a whole lot of time with too many intros and stuff like that, except my two favorite people in the whole world, my brother from another mother, Mr. Dave LaMont, and Mr. Jeff De Forrest joins us to talk sports.
How are you guys?
Good to see you. Take care of all the time wasting you can ask for, Gary. Leave it back.
Well, I just bring up the topics and then I let you two go at it. So, you know, it's not a big deal. Let's get to the whole thing. Before the show, Tommy was reading something from Sports Illustrated that apparently the Heat have a maybe a possible trade with Jimmy Butler in process, or the rumors thereof.
Yeah, you would imagine. Yeah.
Go on.
What are they going to do?
Tommy, you want to come on board and talk about it? Tommy?
No, he's keeping
Can
out.
You hear me?
I don't know. He said there was a possible
See if you
trade.
can get Woj to comment on it.
Tommy, what?
Something about the Suns, and it was we were going to get it's a 3-guy trade. Hold on one second. Let me pull it up.
I imagine Bradley Beal's name will be in it.
Bradley Beal is in it, and two other guys that I didn't really know much about. It's 2 guys from the Suns and a 2031 pick. Hold on one second.
2031. Who thinks that?
Josh Richardson and one other guy. Here, hold on a second.
I think one of the Van Arsdales is involved in a deal. Not that we die. That's what you were going to get for Jimmy Butler. I thought they were going to trade him to the Bucks for Grayson Allen and Antetokounmpo's brother. And this day away, they could have sold it to the fans as saying, "Hey, look, we got Antetokounmpo for Jimmy Butler. What do you want from us?" But
Yeah,
the relationship had soured.
Oh yeah,
apparently. And is there anything worse? And you played your share of basketball and at a very reasonably talented level, Dave. You were a good big man on the inside back when people, weren't all 7 feet tall. And there's nothing worse than a guy who was sulking on the court. I mean, you got some 8-year-old and you bench him for a few minutes and he goes into a funk, and it never gets better. And that's what happened with Jimmy Butler, so it seems.
The telling thing was the press conference. That's what really got him in trouble. And that was the big warning shot for the public, in case the public didn't know what was going on, when they talked about trying to get the joy back in playing the game. Okay, well, I can see where guys, can lose that spark doing the same thing over and over again. But to admit it publicly was a little surprising. But then again, Butler obviously knew what he was doing. He's far from stupid. And I'm sure he thought, well, okay, I really don't want to play here anymore. I want to try a different situation, a winning situation. Although, funnily enough, they're playing decent ball right now. And so he knows that this is one way to do it, is to say something that's mildly outrageous, and it's going to break up the heat on the front office, and that's what's happened.
Jimmy's speaking as we speak.
Yeah.
All right,
here it is.
A little bit more to it, though. I mean,
Suns get Butler, Richaun Holmes, and Josh Richardson. Heat receives Bradley Beal, Ryan Dunn, 2031 first-round pick swap.
31.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah. All right. Well, that's not anything to get super crazy excited about, but I do think they're going to have to move on. Do we agree that the Heat need to move on from him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. When Pat Riley says, if you're not on the court, you don't need to be talking, that kind of tells me right away, yeah, bye-bye, Jimmy.
Pat Riley also said we're not trading Jimmy Butler.
Did he say that? I don't remember that part of it.
When this first started, that was the statement that came from him through the team. Now, a week-ish, 10 days later, Butler has his press conference and says what he says, and obviously that got Riley's attention naturally, and he's changed. I'm sure he's changed his mind. But I don't know what the interest is around the league. Phoenix is okay. Maybe that's what Butler needs, is a fresh address to rejuvenate his career. Miami seems to be stuck in that. Are we fighting to play in for the playoffs? Are we going to be the 7th or the 8th seed mode that they've been in for a couple of years? This is not the Jimmy Butler who's going to carry them to the finals.
No.
This is a different guy. He doesn't play as much, doesn't play as well. So I do agree. It's time to go ahead and thank him for what he did, which was a lot, and get him out of here.
Yeah. Jeff?
Oh, I mean, it's an interesting story from a lot of different angles. I've never been a fan, I'm sure you guys aren't either, of the disgruntled athlete, the guy that's
No.
demanding a trade, and you're looking at the picture and thinking in the NBA, they're paying a guy $50 million. That should be enough to motivate you to at least play to the best of your abilities, whether you're happy with the overall situation or not. Clearly, you're looking at Jimmy Butler, was looking to get his extension, sign for as much money as he can, get 2-3 more years on a contract. He's 36 years old, so for him to instigate some kind of controversy and or acrimony, maybe, like you said, Dave, a good strategy on his part. He got what he was looking for. He's out of here, and we'll see if the Phoenix Suns, they seem to be very generous with their capital. They gave that guy, what was it, Monty Williams, the coach, they had him on a 10-year contract. Oh, no, that was Detroit gave him the 10-year deal at $10 million a year, and then they fired him after 1 year. But they weren't afraid to let him go with a lot of money left on his contract. Also, after he was a coach of the year, situation where probably, I mean, Jimmy Butler would be better served, and the Suns will be a better team with him if he's involved than they were with Beal, who wasn't exactly a perfect fit to play a lot. So
No, and Beal kind of started that back nine too.
What's that?
Go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry.
No. You said something about the back nine.
Well, I said Beal's kind of on the back nine of his career also.
Yeah.
He's been a very good player at times, but no, I think his best days have moved on. I'm looking to see just Phoenix in the standings at the moment.
They're in last place.
Yeah, I was going to say they're not exactly a team that they are tied with Golden State. Now they're 500, so they're still definitely a playoff contender to finish in that play-in game zone. But they're tied with the Warriors at 19-19, a half out of third. But they're in last place, Jeff, in a division where the leading record is only 4 above 500. So all you need is a good winning streak, and you'll pass the Lakers or the Clippers, who are first place by virtue of just geography.
Yeah. And Butler, in spite of the fact that when he was acquired by the Heat, everybody was happy, but there always seemed to be this opinion or feeling that they probably needed one more really top-notch player with Jimmy Butler that they never actually acquired. You were hoping maybe Bam Adebayo would be that guy, or Tyler Hero. The funny thing is, Tyler Hero was the subject of every trade rumor before the season, as the Heat were trying to find a complimentary player for Jimmy Butler that could make him a championship caliber team. And nobody wanted him, right? Including that guy, Joe Cronin, not the former American League president, but the guy who's a GM in Portland. Mm-hmm. How much of a bozo does he look like?
Yeah.
If this trade or the trade possibility, whatever the Heat offered, was more public, he would be in a position to possibly have orchestrated or he took himself out of a deal that probably was the reverse of the Deshaun Watson deal, where the trade for Deshaun Watson was fatal to the Browns.
The Browns will suffer for years with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Let's change gears a little bit. Miami Hurricanes get a new quarterback. There's been some disgruntled fans that say they don't want Beck. They'd rather have the guy from Texas.
The guy from Texas didn't want to come here, apparently.
Apparently not. And he wasn't exactly brilliant this year at Texas either. I mean,
I don't think so.
He wasn't. And but I like, they say that Beck is going to be fine. His elbow's going to be ready for the spring. I don't think Mario would bring somebody in and pay him. And there's been all kinds of rumors from $4 to $6 to $12 million. Miami has not released what it is. I spoke to a buddy of mine, and he said it's probably between 2 and 4, somewhere around there. But he says, besides, his girlfriend goes to the U.
Oh, yeah. High-profile basketball player, Hannah Cavender. So that undoubtedly helped that he can spend time with her. And so it is Hannah, right? Not Haley? I think it's Hannah.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Who's the better of the two players, by the way. He's actually pretty damn good. No, that's fine. Let's just see what happens. He helped Georgia get close to the championship game before he got hurt.
Right.
So let's just see if he's worth it. I mean, you knew based on what you saw in the Pop-Tart Bowl that what they had after Cam Ward already on the roster may not be good enough. And so once again, you're going to get another placeholder, which gives you an opportunity to either recruit somebody the old-fashioned way or develop what's behind him. and just have to wait and see. Assuming that I'm sure his elbow will be fine by the time August and September roll around. See what happens.
And then, of course, they have a new defensive coordinator. They got him from Minnesota. He was ranked in the top 10 with his defense in Minnesota, only giving up, I think it was what? I got it here somewhere. There we go. 4.7 yards per play and about 17 points per game, which is certainly better than anything Miami did this past year. And so any improvement there. And from what I've been seeing by the recruitments, Mario's going after some big studs on the defensive side. He's lost a few on the defensive side, but I think
He
he's
didn't have any big studs on the defensive side this year, so that's no big
yeah.
loss. All right, here's what I was going to say. And
Go ahead.
All right, so Lance Guidry was the guy they brought in to be the defensive coordinator who lost his job. He came from Marshall, all right, where he had top 10, top 5 defenses. So the resume, the stats, all that stuff looks good. Same thing with the guy from Minnesota. He looks like a tough guy. He's got a bald head, he's got a beard. Oh, okay, he's going to be tough. Okay, well, let's see it. But my point is, you can't always judge a guy when he shifts conferences, shifts locations, all this other stuff, just by what he did at the other place. Because if that was that's you don't think Lance Guidry got hired because he did a great job at Marshall? Of course he did. So this guy did a great job for Minnesota. Let's hope, for the sake of Miami people, he does a great job here and can turn it, and he should be able to turn some of this defense around just by showing up. But we can brag about what he did at Minnesota, but will it actually translate? Is my whole point.
Yeah, well, that remains to be seen, and we will find out. I mean, anything's better than what we had, that's for sure, because that team was about as they didn't communicate with each other, discombobulated, whatever you want to call it. Just it wasn't good. It stunk most of the time in the defense.
Worked at Marshall, though.
Yes, it worked at Marshall, and we were supposedly having a good defensive line. Well, that didn't work out very well. It was almost like they were standing around going, well, I'm wearing a UM uniform. That's a big deal. Hey, it don't happen like that. So I don't know. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, the last time we went through my theory, Dave's hair was standing up like Don King, and he was in complete disagreement with my Mario Cristobal theory, which is that as much as he's capable of assembling good staffs maybe and bringing people in, his game day coaching is so suspect that I think that's the big compromising factor with the Miami Hurricanes. And the defense was awful, so you need some players if you're going to be the defensive coordinator, and it would help to bring some guys in. It seems like, again, this year, Mario's got the magic touch. My question, though, about this whole thing with Beck is that the Kavanagh twins, they've been in school longer than Blutarski, haven't they, Dave? I mean, they were there.
They started.
How often do you have like a pro wrestling career in between your days as a college student?
Let's see. Fresno State to Miami to TCU and then back to Miami. So I would assume this is their last year of eligibility. I don't believe anybody's had. Yeah, they were supposed to do some stuff with wrestling. I don't follow pro wrestling anymore, so I don't know if they ever did anything. But yeah, they were. I mean, when we first started hearing about athletes getting other opportunities who weren't like football and basketball players, who were in the so-called non-revenue sports. Livy Dunn, of course, at LSU was one big name, and these two women were other big names. And that was one of the big reasons they left Fresno State to come here, is because many more opportunities await them in a much larger area than Fresno. And again, one of them is actually a legitimately good basketball player. So you want someone like that on your team. So Katie Meyer is able to get them over here. Then there was, as they left, went to TCU, and then you had the whole thing. Here's the sliding doors moment. Remember when Caitlin Clark lit up Louisville?
Yeah.
The guard she lit up was a point guard named Haley Van Lith. Van Lith leaves Louisville and goes to where? TCU. What position? Same as Hannah. Hannah goes, wait a minute, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be a backup, so I'll just come back to Miami and, continue with my branding and all the other stuff that they do in addition to playing ball. So if Caitlin Clark doesn't have a huge game against Louisville, we might not even have Carson Beck in Miami.
Yeah, true. I think time will tell. Only time will tell. Miami Dolphins, the wide receiver, Tarek Hill. is this guy nuts or is it just he's a malcontent? He leaves Kansas City. I mean, he
didn't leave Kansas City. Did he? I mean, he left, and
yeah.
I don't know, Jeff. Please take the lead on this one.
Tyreek Hill, very typical of that we see this type of athlete quite a bit. Where and Jimmy Butler might fit into the same category, where they're high performance level. They originally come to a team and do a lot of good. Not sure what the real issue was this year. Drew Rosenhaus's agent is saying that he played the whole season with a broken wrist. That certainly could explain the drop-off in numerology. He was about half of his totals, maybe 60% of the phenomenal accomplishments he had in the past. I think, that's the type of – I don't even know if you want to call him a diva receiver because I don't think it really is enough of an accurate description. Somebody's going to be a little bit difficult, even though he appears to be all in, constantly saying, it's all about the team and this and that and the other thing, but seems to be creating some other problems that make you think that you might be better off if it was addition by subtraction by getting rid of the guy, where we saw this with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. Yeah. Where's Buffalo at today? They're doing just fine without him, even though he appeared to be far and away their best player. And that was kind of the case in Kansas City. Came to Miami, did some great things, and didn't have the best of seasons this year. Should he be complaining openly about how he wants out of here? That could be just post-last game frustration. I'm never a big fan of a guy who takes himself out of a game. No. And just sits the bench. I mean, it's an ugly look. But we saw that same level of detachment even when he was on the court with Jimmy Butler the last couple of games he played. So, I mean, it appears, though, at least Pat was part of Rosenhaus's statement about the broken wrist, was that he's all in. He's fully committed to Miami. And can he resurrect the fantastic play that he had the previous couple of seasons? We shall see. But it appears Miami has a variety of problems, none of which can be addressed in a real simple, straightforward fashion, including whether or not they really wanted to go forward with Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, which I've said this a million times, Dave. Don't you wish you worked at a radio station or a television station or a network that was owned by Stephen Ross? It wouldn't matter how bad you were at your job. It wouldn't matter how many times you screwed up the same thing. It wouldn't matter how many players you misidentified, how many times you were falling asleep during some fantastic run that a team was making. You'd still have your job because that's the way he operates. At least that's the way he operates his sports teams. He always gives people more time than you think their accomplishments would justify. So
this would be year four for McDaniel coming up. Yeah. I thought it was fascinating that he had that press release ready to go almost after the final whistle.
Yes.
That was something he had obviously made up his mind that day or a week or two in advance that, I don't feel the need for any changes. Whatever his reasoning is, there were some injuries, including Tua. They obviously were weak in the backup quarterback position. So you address that often. They did have bad luck with injuries, but then again, so does everybody else in the NFL. Detroit being the lead example of all that, and yet they still managed to win. And in Detroit's case, have this magical season that's continuing next Saturday night. So I don't know if you can fall back completely on that, but he's obviously sees something that we don't. And maybe one of my theories has always been, I don't like constant change in sports because it just leads to constant losing. When you're changing visions every 2 or 3 years because you're not patient, it just leads to blurred vision. And it just leads to, well, this guy wants to do this, but our roster isn't built for that. Now we got to rip apart this roster and do it. Oh, crap. We went 3-13, 2 years in a row. We fired him. Now we want to get this guy. Well, his vision is this. Well, we got to get So maybe Ross is subscribing to the theory that I'm just going to sit back and give him another year. I would have to think that after, this is the 4th year of this combination together coming up, that if they don't at least make the playoffs, and listen, New England went out and got their coach. The immediate expectation is that they won't be a 3 or 4 win team this coming 2025 season. But I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team. Obviously, as long as Josh Allen's alive, Buffalo's going to be contending.
Oh, yeah.
And as long as Gary is alive, the Jets will be contending, which means So, and obviously you can leave the Jets out of it. So, and the other thing is we talked about expectations. So many people had the Dolphins in first place this year because Buffalo was supposedly going to step back. We all knew New England was going to suck. And we kind of figured the Jets would be like 9-8, and they didn't even come close.
And I think the key for the future for the Miami Dolphins is Tua.
Well, it has been for years. I mean, last year, every time the poor guy dropped back to pass, everybody held their breath. But this year, with Tyreek Hill subpar, their long passing game was gone. They had to do these short timing patterns and do ding, 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 ding down the field. And that's the other thing with Tua. If you notice, most of the quarterbacks who are still kicking around in the playoffs can move. Now, Jared Goff being a notable, and Darnold being notable exceptions, and actually Stafford, come to think of it, but Stafford's been around 1,000 years and it has a ridiculous amount of talent. Darnold is having a magical year, and Goff is in the perfect position for his talents. He has been utilized. This is coaching in its finest, what they do in Detroit. But you look around, everybody else has a quarterback who can move. Tua really is not a running threat. And you are concerned about his safety. You got to design an offense where it's not a drop back offense where he's got to, wait for that pass pocket to hold up. He's got to get rid of the ball quickly. He's quite good when he does it. But as soon as he faces pressure, not quite so good.
Yeah.
So
Dave LaMont and Jeff De Forrest joining us here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. Moving on to the New York Jets. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be riding off into the sunset? Is he coming back for another year, or does he go into the dark room and stay there forever?
That's a great question. You really have to question this guy's, mental stability, right? Who goes to Mexico to do drugs? With the, the big concern about fentanyl and all the other things that came up during the presidential election and the campaigns there. It became, if you weren't aware of it, people should find it fairly obvious that this is a big problem. So if you're thinking about going and doing some hallucinogenic drugs, why would you ever go to Mexico, where there's a pretty good chance that somebody from the cartel has spiked this thing with a little bit of fentanyl or whatever, some deadly component? Not the smartest guy. And besides that, I don't know if he was driving, but who would get in a car with Danica Patrick? Would you, Dave?
I thought they were broken up a long time ago.
They did, but this guy's done some really outrageously stupid things, and so who knows where his mind is at in terms of coming back. He sort of showed signs of life at the end of the regular season.
Yeah.
But getting back to your Mike McDaniel thing, you can't motivate your team to at least put up an effort against a team in a final game. I don't know that it's any great distinction anymore between 8-9 and 9-8, but I always felt this way playing sports, that no matter what, I didn't want to have a losing record. And if there was a chance to dodge that, you were going to put everything you had into making sure that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You lose to a team in convincing fashion that just got disgraced in a 40-point loss to the Buffalo Bills the week before, immersed in controversy the entire season with a completely inept replacement for Robert Saleh, this Albert guy. Early on, our good buddy, mutual friend, Dave, Jason Cole, said, this guy can't coach. He couldn't coach a dog to eat steak, much less be a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
So a big drop off from Saleh if they were going to try to salvage their season at 2-3.
Right.
And they just play into making mistake after mistake. Most people, like they do sometimes with Stephen Ross being too generous, they talk about Woody Johnson just being incompetent.
And the thing too, Jeff, that I wonder about is with a new head coach coming in New York, does he even want Aaron Rodgers?
Well, we don't know. That's a great question because we don't know who the coach is. Obviously that's a team, but here's the problem. You quickly identify that as a team that needs a complete teardown, starting probably at the quarterback position. But how do you trust the personnel people to make the right decisions? How do you trust the owner to not interfere in these decisions? How do you trust, the ownership model we've talked about a bunch on this program is the Mickey Arison type that hires the people he thinks are the best people, and he sits back and lets them do their jobs. Well, obviously Woody Johnson and his family are not like that. So you're doomed to bad ownership. They're going to have a hard time finding a highly qualified candidate. Somebody will do it. Rex Ryan wants to do it because I think he thinks he knows how to handle the position. And at this point, why the hell not? At least you have somebody with some experience going in there. But Rodgers,
Dave, wasn't he the head coach of the Jets at one time?
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yes. It's, in other words, that's why I'm saying, listen, I don't know if you're going to get, look, if I'm a young, hot assistant coach, like say Ben Johnson, that's the guy at Detroit. Everybody talks about Ben Johnson. And now with the Dallas job just opening up a couple of hours ago, that's another name that's going to go. And that job does have some attractiveness to it because that team has more talent than they let on.
That was my next question about Dallas, but you're telling me that McCarthy's gone?
Yeah, they could not agree on a contract.
Well, good for Mike, because you got to get away from that lunatic. As long as he's the general manager, they're never going anywhere.
Well, and that's the other problem. So if you're an assistant coach, and I've read dozens of articles about this, seemingly dozens of articles, and they all say the same thing. Almost every one of these situations is bad because of ownership or general manager. The Tennessee thing was really weird. They fired a general manager after only a couple of years. The mistake they made was getting rid of the guy who was there, although Vrabel's last 2 years there weren't very good. But what head coaching job out there that's available in the NFL is attractive? If you were a 40-year-old who's going to take your first head coaching job and you've had great success as an assistant, would you go to one of these teams and risk your head coaching career getting stuck with a couple of 3 and 14 years and getting fired? I don't know if I would.
One place I can tell you I would not go for all the money in the world, a city that I love very much, Chicago. I wouldn't go there.
And you have a quarterback there. You have a decent quarterback there who could get better. And
the problem with that is terrible, Dave.
We have management issues, and you have an awful offensive line. I mean, Caleb Williams surviving the year without being killed is a minor miracle, and putting up halfway decent numbers that he did is really – I don't think he gets enough credit for that, because that offensive line was frighteningly bad. None of those jobs are attractive. Jacksonville, you have an onerous owner. You have a guy who thinks he knows everything. The Jets, you have a guy who thinks he knows everything. New England, okay, I can see that for Vrabel because he has an in with Kraft already. The Raiders job, who the hell wants that job? You have another owner who thinks he knows everything. The only thing the Raiders have going for them, Jeff, is Brady.
Yeah, and that may go against him as a broadcaster. That's for sure. I was talking with a friend of mine who actually was working with him a couple of weeks ago on a broadcast, and what team would really want to let Tom Brady, owner of another ball club, in on any of their inside information going into a game? Who would want to tell this guy a thing? So they have, and you've probably sat through and maybe snoozed through any number of production meetings where you already know what it's going to be all about. There's nothing new being said. You ask the token question. Oh, yeah, if there's a 2nd and 10 and no time, just throw it in to show that you were, halfway interested in what these guys were saying.
Yeah.
But, definitely a conflict. Deion Sanders is making noise about going to the Raiders if they draft both of his sons. That's
I think they're only going to be able to get one at a time because those guys are projected to be high picks. And Deion would at least, I think, excite the franchise, excite the fan base, because if you're a Raiders fan, here you are, you've got this beautiful stadium, you're in a brand new place, and you can't do anything right. They've missed on the quarterback position too lately. So there's none of those jobs, Gary, to me are even remotely attractive. And of course, part of it is because they've developed this habit of losing tons of games. It was just a couple of years ago that Jacksonville pulled off that outrageous comeback. In Doug Peterson's first year, you got a guy who won a Super Bowl, beat Brady in Philly and Doug Peterson, and yet for some reason he got stupid. Now, I don't think he got stupid. I just think he had bad players and they ran a bad team. And maybe he just lost interest. Who the hell knows?
Has Pittsburgh lost its mojo with Mike Tomlin? Is it time to move on?
Now there's a question.
Tough one. Yeah. I mean, he certainly deserves the opportunity to stick around. The guy's never had a losing season. And Pittsburgh wasn't supposed to be all that great this year either. If you wanted to go expectation of productivity, nobody thought that much of the Steelers. If anything, you thought that Tomlin would be in trouble because he was going to go 6-11 this year. So the fact they started so strongly and made a pretty good representation up until about 5 weeks ago, when you started to see the decline, and unfortunately some of the warts started to surface, and they ended up on a 5-6 game losing streak at the end of the year, including the playoff game. They haven't been successful in the playoffs, but it isn't like they've had the greatest roster of talent either. So
that's where I'm going to the GM.
They don't fire coaches there in Pittsburgh. The idea that they're going to fire Tomlin, I think, is far fetched because they've had 3 head coaches in the last 60 years. I mean,
1969.
We were talking earlier about teams that hold on to. Owners that hold on to coaches and stuff. The Pittsburgh Steelers have only had 3. I knew one of them very, very well because he coached in Baltimore. But they don't fire people right away, but
they never do.
No.
No, I think that the guy who shouldn't be answering his phone right now might be the general manager, because you look at what they did is they got to the playoffs with not a very good offense. They changed quarterbacks. They obviously got the worst of Russell Wilson. He had a couple of good games when he first started out, but he deteriorated, and so did the rest of the team. The running game was non-existent. He didn't really have any explosive players to go to. Pickens was supposed to have this big year, didn't develop. Defensively, they started to collapse. T.J. Watt did not have a good year at all.
Yeah.
Some of the components that were necessary for the Steelers to succeed, it did not come through.
Right.
So you're right. I think getting to the playoff. I'll tell you another thing. If for some reason Tomlin doesn't coach that team, he will have a job in 60 seconds.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, instantly, Dave. By the way, T.J. Watt did not even have a tackle the other day.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He faded down the stretch. And that is the linchpin of the Steelers defense the past several years. So if there a problem in the locker room, it may be, in that case, the coach is somewhat responsible for that. Do you just have a bad collection of people and it's time to kind of go 8-9 one year or 7-10 and try a different approach? I don't think Tomlin's the kind of guy that's going to want to stick around for that sort of thing. But right now, I'm kind of with Defo on this. I think Tomlin, I'm not saying performed miracles, but they might have been the worst team in the playoffs. Coming into it, and I think about it. Yeah, I probably think they were, or at least they were on the worst form coming into the playoffs.
The worst team that showed so far, and we didn't expect that was.
But if you look at it overall,
the Chargers was the Chargers.
The fact this guy went 10-7 even with that team. I mean, that's impressive. When you're looking for a coach, you were talking about McDaniel. I'm not sure he has this characteristic yet. And especially with his lousy record against teams that are 500 or better, which is an atrocity.
Abominable.
So can your coach provide you? I mean, they always talked about baseball managers maybe being worth 5 games a year. Well, that's a lot, even in a 162-game season. So if a coach is maybe good to grind you out 1 or 2 wins because of his decision-making, his clock management, his strategies, whatever it is, play calling, then that's a real asset. And you wouldn't have to say that Tomlin did that, because that did not look like a 10-7 team, in spite of the fact that they had a really impressive record before this last losing streak. But I would say he did more with that talent or level of talent than a lot of coaches could have done.
Yeah.
And the fact they ended the season so poorly is not so much a reflection on him, but maybe just a jolt back to reality for the roster that they assembled. So maybe you're on it with the GM.
Yeah. And by the way, the Chargers looked absolutely pitiful.
Mm-hmm. That was surprising, because I was thinking about the difference a coach can make in a team when you upgraded to Harbaugh, and he was able to, and starting already by drafting, of course, what else? An offensive lineman with his first round draft choice. But yeah, Justin Herbert had a poor game, threw more interceptions in one game than he had all year. And Houston's good, and they played a little better than they have been down the stretch. So they get Kansas City now. That ought to be fascinating. And the Chargers were bad. That is surprising, but there's a stable situation. If you're a Charger fan, you wake up, look, we weren't going to win it all. Mm-hmm. I like our coach. He's successful. He wins no matter where he is. We're going to be okay. Am I worried about Herbert? Yeah, a touch. Definitely a touch. But if Harbaugh thinks like a quarterback, maybe he can work with a guy and make him better.
He was better for most of the year, though. He really was.
Jeff
He had improved greatly in his effectiveness. And back the magic question once again, did the Dolphins make an historic and catastrophic blunder by taking Tua over Herbert? I'm not sure that question has been completely answered, but for most of the season, up until this last game, where most of the wise guys were thinking the Chargers were a cinch in this one, they were favored on the road against Houston. Mm-hmm. Houston hadn't been nearly as impressive as they've been in the past. They started out the year 5-1 and were just average at best from that point on. Stroud was not having as good of a season as he had his rookie year. Chargers went in there with everybody thinking that they were going to come out with a victory going on the road. So I think that was the most startling result of all of the wild card playoff games, unless we get something radical that happens tonight. But it wouldn't be a surprise if Sean McVay figured out a way to decode the Minnesota Vikings, especially if Darnold, who had been magnificent all year, as you alluded to, Dave, goes back to that Christopher Cross game that he had where everything is sailing. I mean, the old joke applied that he could have overthrown a small country with the way he was passing the ball.
Well, it was
Dave
interesting to
LaMont
me.
and Jeff De Forrest is joining us here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. Let's shift real quick. Super Bowl, Kansas City, Detroit.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to let you weigh in on that one first here, Dave, because I think it's more open than that. I don't know that it's a veritable certainty those two teams will be there.
I think that I don't think it'll be the Ravens. Somehow they find a way to.
Well, the Ravens have had a history, and this is the one knock on Lamar Jackson, is that he has not won the biggest playoff game yet. Despite his, possible another MVP season. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets it. Wouldn't surprise me if Josh Allen gets it. Now he has a partner in Derrick Henry, which makes Baltimore all the better and makes them much more dangerous, I think. And so actually, if I would probably rank Kansas City as the third best team in the AFC right now. Not the best. They got a luckier draw with Houston. Baltimore and Buffalo is this unfortunate knockout game that would actually be a damn good Super Bowl in its own right.
Yeah.
So I think the winner of Buffalo and Baltimore should be the favorite for the AFC. As far as the NFC, Detroit seems to be. It's interesting. You have two teams playing Saturday night, living this charmed life. In Washington with 5 wins on last plays, including last night, and Detroit with all the injuries, still finding a way to figure out how to do it. Playing always with their foot to the pedal, never letting up when they have the ball in offense, and so that. It's a fascinating matchup. I kind of think Detroit's a little bit better there. Washington's defense is decent, but it's probably not good enough to slow that team down. And we don't know how the Eagles looked pretty rugged defensively yesterday. Their passing game was non-existent, but they can live without it because Hurts is dangerous with his legs, and obviously in Barkley you have another guy who could be the MVP, by the way. Yeah. And I can see Detroit. I can see Detroit against Buffalo or Baltimore before I see anything else.
Really? Okay. I'll mark it down.
I mean, Kansas City has this going for it, guys. And I said this last year. I picked Kansas City to win the Super Bowl, not because of their great offense, but because their defense was playing so well. And there's just something about Kansas City that in a game crisis, obviously, they do the right things. They don't make mistakes at the end of games. What do we need to go? Oh, we need a field goal here? Okay, we'll get a field goal. Oh, we need to stop? Yeah, we'll get a stop. They play with the confidence of champions.
Yeah.
And this is going to be tested. I think Houston's going to be feisty, and it's going to be tested if Kansas City wins again. I'm just not as sure about them this year because I don't think their offense is that good.
No. Jeff, what does Vegas have to say about all
this? I believe Detroit might be the favorite to win it all. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the most recent postings, but you're not going to be committed to some mental institution if you start espousing the idea that Detroit's going to win the championship this year. A friend of mine I am vicariously rooting for. I may have mentioned this on one of the previous shows. He cashed a $90,000 ticket on a $100 bet, where he parlayed the champions in 4 different sports or 4 different leagues. I guess 2 of the sports were basketball, but he had UConn to win the national championship in the NCAAs. He had the Boston Celtics to win the NBA title. He had the Panthers to win the NHL Stanley Cup. And then that was all parlayed on 1 ticket for $100 to the Dodgers winning the World Series. So he cashes $90,000 on that. But he makes a subsequent ticket with a 5th element, and that would be the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. And, you'll love this, Dave, having been involved and indulged in many a gambling endeavor during your days at Highland, maybe still, screaming, "Hey, drop it, Joey!" On a playoff point. If the Ravens win the Super Bowl for his $50 ticket with these 5 components, the payoff is $480,000. So a rooting interest there, but I'm with you. I have a friend that despises Lamar Jackson. He's a stone degenerate gambler, pretty sharp, and he says that this guy has blowtorched more money in clutch spots than anybody in the history of sports, and he just expects him to do it again. Josh Allen also has struggled in this spot, so that's kind of an interesting matchup there.
But they've lost to Mahomes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like they've. It would be one thing if they had lost to the Jets.
Yeah.
in a situation like that.
In
They
an early
lost to a guy who's pretty much fast-tracked his way to the Hall of Fame almost already.
Sure.
So, and the team would go on to win it all. I think it is a test for both, yes, because Buffalo has beaten Kansas City with a plum in the regular season, but can't do it in the playoffs. So if it ends up being that, you'll hear that narrative 7,000 times if that's the AFC Championship matchup. And if Baltimore gets through, then you'll hear, well, Lamar Jackson, and when is he going to, all this regular season magnificent. But the difference with Lamar Jackson is he never had a Derrick Henry before. So Lamar Jackson, in my view, becomes 3 times more dangerous because he doesn't have to do it all, although he's capable of that. And if he gets stuck, he's like, oh, hey, here you go, buddy. Take that for me for a little while. I'm going to take it easy for a few plays.
Derrick Henry reminds me of this guy who used to play with, as a kid in the Sandlot there. His kid's name was Joey Venata. He was really a good athlete, but it wasn't necessarily one of these guys that played on the teams representing the school. And literally, there would be 30 little kids on this guy's back, and the pie would still be moving. Much like you see on certain plays now in the NFL, where everybody's pushing and shoving, and they just let this thing go and don't stop forward progress or whatever. And a guy goes another 10 yards. But that's Derrick Henry, a good friend of ours. I think you're also close friends with the great Joe Casale, Dave LaMont.
Yeah, sure.
And he was standing next to Derrick Henry, he said, because he was doing some spotting for the network on the Ravens game this past Saturday. And, he said that the man is massive. Like nobody would want to run into this guy. You wouldn't want to even turn the corner and accidentally bump into him in a store. I mean, he is flattening people, and he doesn't appear to have lost any of that. No. And now all of his talents are enhanced by the fact that he's probably with a more versatile team, including a quarterback who can also run, as opposed to Ryan Tannehill, who he also looked very good with for many, many years, and maybe he probably helped Tannehill sustain his career, Derrick Henry. So an underrated player, definitely a guy that is going to be influential in this game, and we'll see if the Buffalo Bills can stop him. But I think you could probably throw an umbrella over all 3 of those teams. It appears against Houston, Kansas City, in all likelihood, will prevail, at least straight up. And so they'll be in the championship game and hosting it, possibly in sub 50 below, type of temperatures again.
Well, keep in mind that Houston comes out of a lousy division. I mean, the South is just horrible.
I'm amazed he won that game so convincingly. I really am.
By the way,
LA
I stood next to, in Chicago and in Miami when I first moved home, I stood next to the fridge. You want to talk about a big man?
Oh, he was large.
Holy crap. I mean, I stood next to Bubba Smith. I stood next to some big defensive players, as both of you know, with Michael in the NFL. But the fridge was like bigger, and what a likable guy. Big smile on his face. I mean, it was like just a big, gentle giant. He was just one of those great guys. By the way, I'm trying to get Joe Casale to come on with us. But every time I talk to him, he says, Gary, I'm busy with this weekend and stuff. Maybe that'll loosen up in a couple of weeks after the Super Bowl, and he'll come on and he'll talk to us.
Oh, yeah, it's great stories. Yeah.
Oh, Joe's a great gentleman. Dave and I and you, we all know him. And
he was flying around with Roger Federer on his private jet. I mean, this guy's had a lot of experience. He was telling me something. I went to a show. You can appreciate this, Dave, at the Funky Biscuit last night with Joe. And we saw John Cleary, New Orleans, a classic New Orleans musician, icon there. And he was telling me about the tennis player Leander Paes.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with Leander Paes? He's a doubles player, and he's been around for a long time. I believe he played doubles at a championship level with his brother. But we all know that doubles is something that's out on court 11 at 3 a.m., while the other people, that were involved in the championship round in singles are already celebrating somewhere. So not exactly the high-profile, high-profit type of position. But because he was from India and was like one of their only accomplished athletes, regardless of his stature in the tennis world overall, he had $100 million in endorsements. Leander Paes. So you just never know. I mean, you're thinking, who is this schmuck playing in a doubles match? What does he get? He gets $30,000 for winning the Wimbledon. He has to split that with another guy, and it turns out he was one of the wealthiest, highest-paid athletes of all time, making $100 million in endorsement dollars, which now maybe is not as significant as it was, say, 10, 15 years ago.
No. You give me $100 million. I think.
I probably
Dave, I
could
think.
screw that up. Yeah, only Mike Tyson could mess that up, and it took Ruth Roper to do that for him.
Yeah. We've got the national championship coming up between Notre Dame and Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't need to remind you both how much I despise Notre Dame. I mean, with every ounce of blood in my body, I hate that school. I used to have to work with lawyers that went to that school. I went to Miami, so naturally I have a hatred for that school. But they have some miracle working for them. But I think Ohio State is just a little bit better.
I don't know about some miracle. It's a good football team, especially since they were written off in September after a loss to a MAC team. And then they haven't lost since then. And, they got into a fist fight with Penn State and outfought them. Although, Penn State kind of gave the game away with that crazy interception at the end that allowed Notre Dame to get the chance.
What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? The Franklin or whatever his name is, the head coach of Penn State, is thinking about this 2 minutes.
Well, listen. His players botched it. He didn't throw the interception.
No,
it was a terrible throw and a poor decision. And Notre Dame knew what to do with it to put the game away. Ohio State is finally living up to their expectations. And yes, their expectations are always outsized. I mean, it's a real burden to coach that team. Certainly there are benefits, but it is a real psychological burden to run that program. And there will probably still be people, if they do win, who will be mad about Michigan that will actually take away some of their joy of winning a national championship.
Yeah.
That's just the mentality there. And it probably would be the same if it was Michigan having lost to Ohio State and sitting with a chance to win the national title. But they found they're doing everything right. They're playing great. They took an Oregon team that beat them in the regular season and overwhelmed them. It looked like the varsity against an 8th grade flag team. And that I didn't expect to see. I didn't expect to see Oregon look slow. Oregon's not slow. They haven't been around the Big Ten long enough to become slow. And Ohio State just looks superior to everybody. Doesn't mean that that's going to hold up in a week. But yeah, I have to give them begrudgingly a lot of credit for being able to shake off what could have been and in the old days, that Michigan loss takes them right out of the top 4. They don't make the playoff in a 4-team playoff after losing to Michigan. There's no way.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, what's
this is a rough one for me. I despise both teams. And I have a story that Dave can definitely relate to having with Hurricane teams. Leonard Hamilton actually very briefly said that I had something to do with a loss to UConn when the Hurricanes had yet to win a Big East game. They were new to the Big East. And,
a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, at the Gampel Pavilion. We're going from the hotel and the Gampel Pavilion where UConn plays many of its home games. I don't know how many are there now, but very intimate place. It was a place that Paul D., the athletic director of the University of Miami, he was actually on this trip because he wanted to observe what they had done there and try to do the same thing, replicate it on the UM campus. It ended up not happening then, and they probably ended up with a better arena in the long run. But anyway, it was a little bit of a schlep from the hotel to the Gampel Pavilion. And Leonard Hamilton decides to motivate the team, which was really down in the dumps after losing every game and by wide margins most of the time. They were counting on Kevin Norris, who was a bricklayer, throwing up 30-footers from the top of the key. And we all know that the results were not favorable there. And sure enough, he plays Rudy on the team bus on the way going to try and motivate this team and get an emotional spark, ignite a little bit of enthusiasm in them to go out there and do something impossible. And I hate Notre Dame so much, guys, that while on the team bus, and I didn't usually say anything. I was one of those guys in the background, Dave. You know what it's like to travel as the media guy. You don't want to be intrusive.
You're not really supposed to talk at all on the bus before the game, actually, the way I remember it.
Yeah. So anyway, all of a sudden, Rudy gets in there. He makes the play, and I get up. I couldn't help myself. I hate Notre Dame so much. I start screaming, "He's offsides! Where's the flag?" So now the rest of the Hurricanes basketball team, which was a quiet bunch of guys, and they're screaming the same thing. Yeah, he's effing offsides. He's offsides. What the hell? So Leonard thought I destroyed the mood of the message, and they went.
I think you did.
They got hammered by Richard Hamilton and Jimmy Calhoun's very talented UConn teams of that era. And for a brief moment, I detected a little bit of a division there when I was doing the postgame show. But when Leonard came on, who was not exactly inclined to be all smiles and flowery after a game. I mean, Dave, how many times did you have to ask a losing coach the question, so did you take anything positive away from this?
Yeah, I did that for a while, and then I got out of it because it does sound kind of crazy. And I was around, but I actually won at Gamble. And the thing with UConn, I know we're slightly off topic, but the thing with UConn is that I always maintain that where they played you is what they thought of you.
Oh, yeah,
if they played you in Hartford,
right,
they didn't think much of you. If they played you on campus, a tougher place to play, smaller building, then they were more worried about you because they wanted a real home court advantage.
Yeah.
Whereas with Hartford, it was a normal-sized arena. It's where the Whalers used to play. And it's like, okay, Hartford, big damn deal. You know, they think we suck. And you'd lose in Hartford. But we did win a Gamble one year. But, I actually met Rudy at a bowl game. Gosh, this has to be 9 or 10 years ago. It was in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I think it was the Walk-On's Bistro Bowl. The Walk-On's a sports bar chain. And we were invited to go to Walk-On's. They were throwing a media party there, and the food was free. So I was into that. And Rudy was there. So I've got a photo somewhere in my phone of me with.
Telling me he was offside?
Didn't he go to jail?
I have not seen the movie.
No, you've never seen
No.
Rudy? Wow.
No.
And Ohio State.
I know how it turns out.
Yeah, just for perspective there. Woody Hayes annoyed the living daylights out of me even as a young man. The time he choked the kid on the sidelines there or punched him, that was inexcusable.
Yeah.
Craig Krenzel beating the Hurricanes in that Fiesta Bowl game with Terry Porter running across the field, having just graduated from Ohio State in a recent time prior to that. And all of a sudden, he's throwing a pass interference flag on what would have been a game-clinching play. Such total ugliness. Urban Meyer, a disgrace of a coach as a human being, and an example of what not to be in front of these developing young men. I always hated him. And then I thought Ryan Day was a bozo after he lost the Michigan game. Who would have thought he was going to resurrect
Which one?
From the grave? This past one, where instead of just using his two amazing wide receivers and that wide receiving core, he decides he's going to slug it out on the inside there, like he was smoking Joe Frazier, and run the ball against a team that had no chance to beat them unless he did precisely that, which is why David Portnoy is constantly flying planes anywhere Ohio State is playing, saying extend Ryan Day, which no doubt is something that you can anticipate now. But the way they've put these teams away in the playoffs, now Texas was right there. But maybe one of the bozoic calls of all time, Dave.
Yeah.
Do you run a sweep and have your guy get the ball 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage when you're at the half-yard line on a second down?
You never go backwards. I mean,
Wow.
not even, you don't do that kind of thing. And what made somebody lose their mind momentarily, the arrogance of thinking that was the right call. And it's not the pros, an NFL quarterback would have, you imagine
You got Arch Manning,
right.
too.
I understand. You have a guy with a great brain for the game based on his family history. Maybe he felt like, okay, let's see, but he could have easily changed the play, hell, even called a timeout if they had one. But I think it's going to be great for the ratings. I think in general, the playoff has been successful. I don't know. It sounds like they're going to make more changes because, God forbid, we could have something work for 2 years in a row without having to fart around with it. But I don't know what they're going to do. But there's some talk that they may change. Maybe they reseed. There's talk the NFL is thinking of reseeding if they're doing things so you don't have division winners with lousy records at home against a team with a better record coming into their building, even though that team didn't win a division. As you mentioned, the Houston coming from a bad division, the AFC West wasn't a killer bunch either. So but that's also cyclical. That's the thing. I'm
not a fan of it. I would leave it the way it is for
with the college playoff. I want to give this thing a chance to work on its own merits for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then go, okay, now we've got some data here. What can we do? Instead of just going, oh, well, this is bad. No, it wasn't a disaster. You had some rough games. You know what? You've had rough games every year in the playoff. When you had four teams, you had bad games sometimes. That just happens.
Yeah. Dave, I'm going to give Joe Montana a call and have him call you about Rudy.
Joe's not a fan.
He hates the kid.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He hates the kid.
There, you know,
By
it's
the
so
way,
funny.
didn't he go to jail?
Joe
Rudy?
Montana?
No, not my. No, Rudy didn't.
Oh,
Rudy,
that
or was he?
was the guy from Subway, Jared.
No.
Oh, Rudy, he
Didn't
was a
didn't he
criminal.
get for embezzlement or something?
I could well
Well,
be.
now you're going to make me have to look that up real fast because
Yeah, I know we're almost out of time.
I know, but Wikipedia is a great thing. Daniel Eugene Rudiker, the sociology major. If you're interested, he's now 70 years old. I
He's
see
70, this guy?
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see nothing about him ever getting into trouble. He served in the Navy. He got
The kid who did the
through-
Catholics versus Convicts T-shirts, he works on the Board of Trade in Chicago, and people do not like him. Period.
Brilliant idea, though.
Oh yeah,
He was.
but it cost him.
Oh, wait a minute. He was charged with securities fraud in 2011
Wow,
Ah.
Rudy.
as the chairman of Rudy
Oh, yeah.
Beverage Inc. A settlement required him to pay over $382,000 in fines. It does not. Oh, this is interesting. He admitted he made a mistake, but he didn't go to jail. He was born. Well, you know, in Notre Dame, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
he is now a Mormon,
Oh.
So we'll see him at
Baptized
BYU
into-
on the sidelines.
baptized into the Mormon faith 8 years
Say hello
ago.
to Donnie
Maybe
and
he's like
Marie.
the Cavenders, and he still has eligibility. Might come back and do the same thing again. That would be possible.
If you
Hey
look at
guys,
the
thank you so much. It was fun.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah,
I
I mean
know.
it goes by. You know, we'll rebook for next month at some point or another. But so Dave, you like Ohio State?
A little bit,
Jeff? Jeff?
I think Ohio State probably wins the game. I noticed a drop in the line from the original 9.5 down to 8.5. Would I be tempted to take the points with the Fighting Irish? Maybe so, because I don't think they're without a chance. Just depending on the way the game plays out. But you would have to say after the performances we've seen out of Ohio State, 2 trouncings, and then coming up big against Texas when the moment of truth was there, helped out largely by Sarkisian's what would have to be considered just a bonehead call.
Mhm.
That
We gotta
Ohio
run.
State probably wins the game.
We got to run. Thank you, guys.
Always.
Bye.
Take care. And thank you to all of you out there for taking a few minutes to join us. And we will be back next week.